Esther.
My name is Amirah.
Elena,
Cheryl,
and we are the pioneers.
And now it's 4 a.m. in London Gatwick Airport.
And we are going to Morocco.
Morocco is a country in Maghreb region in the North African. It is known to have a strong presence of Islamic culture which we believe affected the existence of gender inequality. This, however, is interpreted through our westernized perceptions.
Our agenda for this podcast would first begin with aims, followed by objectives, context of research, theories, interviews, examples and experiences, limitations, and their conclusion.
Our aim is to rethink and reposition the tourist understanding of gender inequality in Morocco.
Our first objective would be to explore and understand the concept and theories of gender inequality in general, and our second objective is to discover tourists' perception of gender inequality in Morocco.
Is it a boy or a girl? This is probably the first and most often question asked when a baby is born. The concept of gender inequality has been an area of research for a long time. Researchers have come up with many gender inequality theories, but we have chosen three main concepts to illustrate our understanding and perception of gender inequality. In addition, we will include interviews, observations, and personal experiences that would test the theories.
We will begin with the concept of innate facts by using the essentialism theory, which will then be supported by gender stratification and patriarchy theory. Moving on, we will bring in the concept of social, culture, and upbringing, which includes Marxist feminism theory and social cognitive theory. Lastly, we will talk about the masculinism of a woman using the Beauvoir theory, also known as the second sex.
Essentialism is known to be a controversial term for feminism. It refers to the traditional notion that the identities of men and women are biologically, physically, and socially fixed or determined. The essentialist position therefore cannot acknowledge a possibility of any modification.
This leads back to when it all began. According to the Bible, Genesis 2 verse 22, "And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man." Genesis 2 verse 23, "And Adam said,
This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She called woman because she was taken out of man."
From these verses, learners suggested that God only granted power specifically to male because he named Adam, while Adam named Eve. Thus, we can infer that this is a sign of gender inequality that has been in existence since the beginning. This is supported by two theories, namely gender stratification and patriarchy theory.
Gender stratification is defined as the hierarchical ranking of the sex groups that involve their differential access to both resources and rewards.
Patriarchy theory defines the system of male domination and female subjugation in any society. Every known society has a gender-based division of labor, and the separate tasks of both women and men seem essential for the society's survival. This division of labor is clearly an efficient procedure for cultures to adopt, for not everyone needs to learn to perform a task.
Gender stratification and patriarchy theory are evident in Morocco, as women are hardly seen to be working in the souks or the Medina. Taking into account the fact that childbearing and responsibility for child nursing and its caretaking extensions are universally assigned to females, and hunting has been assigned to males, how would this be held in relation to Morocco?
Let's listen to what our interviewees have to say.
Let's say you were to marry and have a kid. Who do you think will be expected to stay at home to take care of the child?
Of course, me. Yeah, absolutely.
The woman.
The woman.
The mother. Naturally, the mother.
From the interviews, we can deduce that tourists have the perception of women to be more responsible of the child's upbringing and well-being. However, is it because of innate facts, or social, culture, and upbringing?
Essentialism was criticized from a Marxist perspective. As mentioned earlier, essentialism was seen to support the ideological notion that human nature is innate, but Marxists stated that gender differences is socially constructed rather than biologically. The Marxist feminism theory has a direct relation between capitalism and the subordination of women. Women, particularly wives, are excluded in the working world by their husbands and employers, as they are committed to household labor and a detriment to the workplace respectively. Thus, we have several examples that could support this theory. During the interview with our assistant tour guide, he mentioned that women are to stay at home and are not allowed to work in the souks due to safety and marriage reasons. In addition, the interview with our camel drivers also agreed that they would not allow their wives to work in harsh environment or even as cooks at the campsite because they are supposed to be queens while the husband goes to work and earn extra income for the family. These examples of how women are to be kept at home hence validates the accuracy of our theory to a certain extent.
Family also, some families they don't like women to go to work, Yeah, it's not safe also, and to wait for a husband to go.
They say that women, our wives, must stay home. Wife is like a queen.
Next, we will look into the social cognitive theory.
The social cognitive theory explains how people acquire and maintain certain behavioral patterns, which includes activities that exert determinative influence. The three factors, environment, people, and behavior, are constantly influencing each other.
Individuals can choose to behave accommodatively or through the exercise of self-influence to behave otherwise. An intention is a representation of a future course of action to be performed. It is not simply an expectation or prediction of future actions, but a proactive commitment to bringing them about. It is thus believed that it all depends on how rooted someone is towards their own beliefs and values in their actions. Relating back to our experiences in Morocco, a few of us were physically harassed in the souks and men were catcalling as we walked through the streets. On the very same day, a traumatic incident happened after dinner. A car filled with guys passed by chanting away suddenly opened the door, stopped a few meters away from us and decided to alight. At that very moment, it felt like a kidnapping scene. Thus, we conclude that safety for women is worrying. The intention of men contradicts the religion beliefs, but such situations might have been in existence for a very long time, where the younger ones could pick up, turn it into a habit and shape it as a culture. Lastly, we will look into the Beauvoir theory.
According to the Beauvoir theory of the second sex, one is not born but rather becomes a woman. However, 25 years later, after she published the theory in 1949, she realized that there were a lot of loopholes that constitute to the theory, as she acknowledged the fact that she was blessed to be sent to the best school and was in luck to enter the men's world without much difficulty. She was rather self-centered and admit that if she can, the other women can too, without realizing that different women comes from different background, culture, financial, spiritual, and experiences.
In this context, it is understood that women can gain equality and emancipation if they reject the socially oppressive constraints of femininity and adopt masculinity. Women in Morocco are becoming more entrepreneurial as they get involved in the women cooperative associations. Based on our observations, there was an abundance of associations and cooperatives established in Morocco to serve as a place for empowerment through work, education, and life skills. This could also support the theory as they are not allowed to work in public as observed in the souks and imlo. Hence, they created these cooperatives as an outlet to allow the women to become masculine by contributing back to their local community.
We have also acknowledged some limitations in this research. Firstly, the number of tourists might be a misrepresentative to a wider society perception. Furthermore, one's opinion might differ from another. Secondly, it was inevitable to be trapped in language barrier as English was not their first language and we too could not speak Arabic, French or Berber to communicate with the locals. Thirdly, the context of our research could only be conducted at certain places where time was an issue. Fourthly, women are hidden, thus we were unable to interview them. Lastly, the topic of our research are relatively sensitive and there is always a possibility where people's perceptions are not truthful.
In conclusion, we realized that gender inequality has been around for a long time, as interpreted through essentialism. Taking into account of Marxist feminism theory and social cognitive theory which have been critically discussed, people misunderstood Morocco to have gender inequality. However, we can infer that the act of gender inequality in Morocco is due to plausible reasons such as safety and marriage, but not discrimination. With reference to examples mentioned earlier that supports the Beauvoir theory, though it may not be prominent now, but Morocco has been trying to provide opportunities for women to masculinize themselves. Having said that, there is also a need to recognize the presence of gender inequality in childbearing, child nursing, and caretaking in other countries. So now, from a tourist point of view, do you think that there is gender inequality in Morocco?
Let me take a selfie.